In a remote, small village, an uncle skilled in puppetry arrived quietly. His props are exquisitely crafted vivid. It is deeply loved by children. I am also deeply attracted by this unique charm. After the performance that day, we surrounded him. "Beseech you to perform one more time." In the midst of pushing and shoving, a puppet accidentally fell down. I picked it up, carefully observed. The more I looked, the more amazed I became. The mole between the eyebrows of the doll was exactly the same as the mole on the missing sister's body. My sister has been missing for a long time. I want to go find her. But my grandmother took a stick, beat me, saying, "You're a good-for-nothing who only costs money. If it's lost, it's lost. If you dare to come looking for me, I'll kill you." I'm extremely scared. Grandma has a strong grip. Be hit by her with a stick, it will be bruised and swollen for several days. But my sister was raised by me, all by myself. I hesitate, but I still want to go find her. Hurry up and mow the lawn. Seeing me dawdling, Grandma picked up the stick and gestured at me again. My whole body tensed up. All courage and determination were instantly shattered. Didn't dare to look into my grandmother's eyes anymore. Dare not mention finding my sister anymore. Silently picked up the knapsack, turn around, and walk up the mountain. It was already evening when the pigweed was cut. The village is still bustling at this time. The boys gathered together to watch the puppet show on the temporarily erected stage. The puppets in the performance are vividly lifelike, just like a real person. My pace involuntarily slowed down. He heard from the villagers that the uncle who performs puppet shows is a puppet masterin. The early years few people watch his puppet show. The craftsmanship of doll is rough. His skills are also quite rusty, but not for many years. She took an elderly gentleman as his teacher pledge everything to learn a craft. After Thathis puppet show began to be Lucy have mastered my skills, but my family has fallen apart. The wife ran away with his daughter later. He also left home. After enduring many hardships, they came to our village to perform and earn a living over time. The adults in our village have become very happy. It is said that he can drive economic growth. Initially, I didn't understand what that meant, but now I understand a little bit more. Economy is money. Because it was the third day since he came to the village, I can only see meat on my table, although that strict grandmother forbids me from eating. End of song. The puppet show has also ended. Everyone was still in a state of euphoria. Run up to that uncle and shout at him to put on another show. Pushing and shoving, a puppet fell down strangely. I walked forward and picked it up, carefully observing. I wonder what this doll is made of. The skin feels very delicate. It's like touching a real person. I was mesmerized by what I was watching. For a moment, I forgot the time, until I noticed a blood-red mole between the eyebrows of the doll. I was stunned. My sister also has a mole on her body. This mole is exactly the same as the one on my sister's body. The doll also seemed to be moving. "Sister," she said, her mouth opening and closing. "Save me." "Ah!" I shouted and threw the doll on the ground. I was so scared that I didn't dare to move. When I regained my composure, "The sun is almost setting," I secretly exclaimed. "Oh no!" Run home quickly. I dare not delay for a moment. If I come home late, Grandma will hit me again. Behind me, Uncle Lee picked up the doll and stared at me with a half smile. "Uncle Lee's baby can cry." She called me sister. Grandma. I ran into the house, panting. Grandma's hand trembled for a moment, and then she suddenly took a step forward. With a snap sound, a resounding slap landed heavily on my cheek. "What nonsense are you spouting?" she said to me angrily. "You're not allowed to eat tonight." Unlucky things. I covered my face, which was sore from being hit. Tears are falling down. I don't know why Grandma is so angry. I lay in the firewood room at night. I can't seem to fall asleep no matter what. My mind is filled with that bizarre Dolly want my sister. When my mother was pregnant, the whole family is very happy. Serve your mother with delicious food and drinks, because the village witch said that my mother is pregnant with a boy. This time, I'm also very happy. If it's a younger brother, when my dad and grandma are happy, they won't hit my mom and me anymore. To ensure a smooth delivery for my mother-dad, specially went to the city to hire a doctor to assist with the delivery. What I didn't expect was, to our surprise, it turned out to be a baby girl. Dad is very angry, chased the doctor out. Then, despite my mother having just given birth, dragging up my mother, I started punching and kicking. The doctor must have been frightened. Her eyes were bloodshot when she was thrown out. I couldn't think about so much and rushed up to protect my mother. I was 5 years old that year. It's still too small. Dad slapped me so hard that I fell to the ground and couldn't move. My mother was lying on the ground, covered in blood. I didn't even have the strength to beg for mercy. Just kept repeating, "Don't hit Dabao, I can still give birth, I can still give birth." My mother has been married to my father for 10 years. Every time. It's a girl. Dad was furious. "Can you give birth? What's the use of having a darned good-for-nothing who only costs money?" Saying that, he kicked his mother's stomach again. "I shouldn't have bought you. You jinx." Perhaps he's tired from fighting. He turned his head to look at his newly born sister. There is a baby tower behind the village. Whenever a new baby girl is born, the villagers will just throw it in. He picked up his sister and was about to head towards the back mountain. My mother, who was initially unable to move, struggled to get up from the ground upon seeing my father's actions, but the moment he stood up, he immediately fell back down. She shouted with all her might, "I can give birth to a son. Don't abandon my daughter. Don't do it." But no one cares about my mom. Finally, the witch came to stop my father. "Have you forgotten what's on your leg? This girl is very useful." I didn't hear clearly what they said. I only know that my sister was left behind. But my mother didn't make it through that day. She bled profusely, can't stop staying before leaving. She repeatedly urged me to carry on living well with my younger sister. Cried very sadly that day. After Mom left, no one will protect me anymore. Dad isn't upset at all. While cursing his bad luck, he casually wrapped his mother in a cloth and threw her into the back mountain. On week later, Uncle Lee came to our village. I don't know what the reason is, for since he arrived, the number of babies in the baby tower is gradually decreasing. Every household no longer feels repelled by having a daughter, whether it's son or a daughter. They are all equally happy. A newborn girl is regarded as a treasuring, enjoying the best care and food, being nurtured to be fair and delicate. However, this kind of favoritism is limited to newborn baby girls. For us, girls who have grown up, nothing has changed in life. Spanking and scolding are still commonplace, although there are almost no female babies in the baby tower anymore. But the number of girls in the village is decreasing. I have never seen what those baby girls will look like when they grow up. Nowadays, there are no female babies over 3 years old in the village anymore, and every household seems to be wealthier than before. Uncle Lee continues to perform his puppet show in the village. This left me both curious and scared. Every day, I complete my household chores ahead of time. Then I sneaked in to watch his performance. His puppets are different every day. This gives me the feeling that the entire village is filled with a strange atmosphere. Especially, my mind is becoming increasingly heavy. It gets worse day by day. Before Uncle Lee came, I like staying with my mom the most. She will tell me stories. It makes me feel much clearer. Headed on one occasion, my mom told me that when she was pregnant with my younger sister, she once hugged me and said before that, I had 2 older sisters, but I completely don't remember them. When I inquired about their whereabouts out of curiosity, Mom's face turned pale instantly. tears silently slide down like disconnected beads. "She's dead," Mom covered her face and cried bitterly, saying, "Dabao, you are fuxing. You crawled back from the brink of death." Hearing this, my head started to ache. I have no memory of what happened before I asked my mother what death is, but she didn't answer, just humming a song to lull me to sleep. I really enjoy listening to my mother sing, because she is the only person in the village who can sing this kind of song. Half asleep, half awake, I heard my mother choked and said, "Death is the baby tower. The god of death is someone from here." I had a dream in my dream. My mother was playing games with my sister. My tears fell down in an instant. I really miss my mom. I stumbled forward, yet somehow I couldn't touch them. Mom is humming a song. My sister is giggling. I looked at them and smiled, too splendid. I couldn't stop laughing, but then I couldn't stop laughing anymore. I discovered with horror my sister's face transformed into that doll's. She slowly turned her head and stared at me intently. Her mouth opened and closed. "Sister, why didn't you save me?" I woke up with a scream, sweating profusely. So it was just a dream. The night is deep outside. Just when I was about to go back to sleep, the door to the courtyard was opened. Moonlight filters through the sparse clouds, casting mottled shadows, casting a chilling silhouette. I froze in place. I didn't dare to move, because I saw the doll with the same mole as my sister walk in through the door. She bounced and skipped towards the house. "Raise your little hand and knock on your father's bedroom door." Loud voice, even from the firewood shed in the yard. I can hear it. "Who is it?" After a loud and coarse shout, "The light is on, Father Dad." A young voice sounded echoing in the night, accompanied by the crisp sound of giggles. Dad exclaimed in horror, stumbling. She ran towards the yard. "Where are you going?" "Dad." My dad was so scared that he slumped to the ground. The puppet walked towards his father with a smile on his face, step by step walking, while humming a song. The singing is exactly the same as the one my mother hums in my dreams. The puppet licked the corner of its mouth with a greedy expression. Suddenly, it pounced on my father's face. "Clamp your hands tightly over your father's mouth and nose." I saw my father's face instantly contort and distort. The body quickly deflated. I was leaning against the window, trembling all over. This scene scared me quite a bit. My finger inadvertently touched the window. The creaking sound was particularly abrupt in the silent night. The puppet abruptly raised its head, staring straight at my direction. My gaze unexpectedly met the doll in front of me. Her gaze was cold, but there was a big smile on her lips. A chill instantly shot up from the soles of my feet to the top of my head, but my body felt as if it was nailed to the spot. Unable to move, I felt as if I was being strangled by an invisible force around my throat. My blood seemed to have congealed. Cold and piercing, my heart started beating wildly out of control, just when I was filled with terror. The puppet moves at an extraordinary speed. Instantly moved to the window. Its face is pressed tightly against the window. Maintain a suffocating distance from me. I can clearly see every detail on its face. The surrounding air seemed to have solidified. I can't help but feel the urge to scream out loud, but it feels like something is blocking my throat. Only a faint wheeze could be heard. Suddenly, everything went black before my eyes. I fainted. I had another dream. But this time, it's at the witch's house. The dim yellow light flickered unsteadily. The silhouettes of Grandma, Dad, and the shaman are reflected in the dim light, casting a shadowy and indistinct image. They gathered together, chattering away. I am both curious and afraid. Stand on tiptoe. Approach the window carefully. Through the gap in the window, I saw my 3-year-old sister lying quietly on the ground. With eyes tightly shut, his face was as pale as a sheet of white paper. The witch was holding an icy iron funnel in her hand, without hesitation. He stuffed it into his sister's mouth, and immediately, she picked up a pot of boiling hot water, poured it in relentlessly, and without hesitation, hot water touches the delicate skin of the younger sister. Instantly, it woke my sister up in pain. She first let out a heart-wrenching howl, but suddenly, I couldn't make a sound, just sobbing. She was struggling continuously, but Grandma and Dad tightly imprisoned her. Don't let her move around. My heart was tugged hard, tears instantly welled up in my eyes, flowing down uncontrollably. I want to rush in, but just at this moment, my sister and I exchanged glances. She was shaking her head at me desperately. She's not moving anymore. Let them do as they please. I was woken up by my grandmother's scream. When waking up, splitting headache. It's as if a heavy hammer weighing thousands of pounds is continuously striking. I don't know how I fell asleep. Or it can be said that he fainted. I remember having a dream, but I can't recall it at all. I only vaguely remember my father being devoured by Uncle Lee's puppet. Step out of the firewood room. Dad collapsed in the yard. The body is twitching uncontrollably. His face was as pale as paper. Close your eyes tightly. It turned out that everything last night was not a dream. Death girl, you sleep like a pig. Grandma saw me come out. He cursed in a trembling voice. She gave me a sharp pinch with her finger and said, "Quickly go and invite the witch over." I stumbled out of the house, galloping through the village. Halfway, a strong voice called out to me, "Hey, child." I turned around and looked directly facing Uncle Lee's shadowy and ambiguous eyes. A sense of inexplicable fear surged up in my heart. Instinctively retreated. I saw you staring at her all the time yesterday. Do you like this doll? He ignored my panic. Take the doll out of the backpack and place it on my hand. The blood mole has turned even redder. It's extremely strange. I was so scared that I suddenly flung my hand away. But that doll felt as if it was growing on my hand. I can't shake it off no matter what. Haha, I gave it to you. Uncle Lee smiled. But the smile didn't reach the bottom of her eyes. Instead, it exudes a chilling and eerie atmosphere. I was so scared that I turned around and ran away. Only when Uncle Lee was out of sight did he slow down. But I don't know when the doll disappeared. Grandma husband's mother. I knocked on the door of the witch and pleaded, "Please save my father." In my yard, the witch stared fixedly at my father. After a long time, she took a deep breath and said, "Your situation is a bit special. It was caused by the resentment of the previous female child." When Grandma heard this, his face turned deathly pale in an instant. A hint of fear flashed across his eyes. "The witch continued, "I can help you resolve your grievances, however." She changed the subject. Pointing at me with his finger, he said, "I want her." Grandma didn't understand and said, "A girl?" The witch's face showed displeasure. Okay. Grandma immediately said, "This girl is now yours. It's not urgent." The witch's muddy eyes sized me up and down, saying, "I'll come to pick her up after it's done." Her gaze made me feel scared. My heart is pounding. She stared at me for a while. "I'm going to arrange things." The witch set up a shrine in the yard. Something covered with black cloth is placed there. The wrinkled hands were trembling slightly. Pull out a slender stick of incense from the incense box. Carefully light it. She closed her eyes, muttering to himself, continuously bowing and kowtowing after seeing the incense stick inserted smoothly. She breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It's done." The witch smiled and pointed to the hall behind me, saying, "Your eldest daughter's skin has been peeled off, and she's not happy about it." I was startled, but upon careful consideration, I feel that something is amiss. Dad was clearly scared by the puppet. Why did the witch say it was a girl who was skinned suddenly? My fingers suddenly felt a pain. It feels as if I've been pricked by something sharp. Lower your head and take a look. It's that puppet. My head hurts a lot. Some things surge up like a tide. I remember. The spiritual medium said that the elder sister is my twin sister. My mother gave birth to 2 girls at once. This is a shameful thing in the village. So my dad took advantage of the darkness and threw my sister and me into the baby tower together. But he was bitten on the leg by a venomous snake. When he was going down the mountain, all hospitals said that it was too late to save him after being sent over. However, the witch in the village told Grandma a folk remedy: seal the mouth, eyes, and nose of a female baby with a special potion. Then it is exposed between heaven and earth to absorb the essence of the sun and moon. After 3 days and 3 nights, peel the skin off someone's head. Applying it tightly to the wound can save a life. Commonly known as exchanging one life for another, my sister is the chosen baby girl. The baby girl's skin is stuck to the wound. My father miraculously recovered. My mother went crazy that night. How did I get home, by the way? I crawled back from the baby tower, listening to my sister's cries. The day I crawled back, all my family members looked at me in horror only. The witch is happy. She said I am a person of extreme yin. Every part of the animal, from skin to bones, has its own use. She sealed my mind with a special potion. But now I actually remember, I stared intently at the 2 people in front of me. They also caused the death of my sister. That night wasn't a dream, it really happened. The skin of the baby girl on the wound of the father needs to be replaced regularly. This is also the reason why the witch prevented Dad from abandoning his sister. My sister was skinned by a witch. It continued to twitch even after being skinned. It took a long time for him to pass away. Hate gradually welled up in my heart. I can feel a red light flashing in my eyes. Night. I took out the doll and carefully examined it in my hand. The moonlight shines down, shining upon her. The shadow under the moonlight seemed to distort. The puppet gradually began to stretch. Its limbs creep around me. Lightly, finally, it sat steadily in front of me. Our eyes met. Sister. The puppet's eyes were blinking as it looked at me. Go ahead, I whispered. She heard the words bouncing and skipping through the courtyard. The moonlight cast her silhouette in a long shadow, like a ghost wandering in the night. She walked straight towards her father, lying in the yard. While walking, G, sound came out of his throat. I chuckled. I wonder where she learned that strange noise. Dad is lying in the yard. The puppet bounced and jumped, lying on its father's leg, lifting up the hem of the trousers and tugging hard. The skin on my sister's leg was torn off by my father. The puppet gestured for a long time. Finally, put it on. It actually turned into a younger sister's appearance, holding my sister's head, but her body still looked like a doll's. This bizarre combination made her whole appearance look both comical and terrifying. She lay on her father's body, greedily sucking. In no time, Dad's body quickly shriveled up. My sister burped. He laughed again, his laughter filled with a sinister and eerie tone. Unlike what just happened, after smoking, my sister's voice became clearer. Meanwhile, my mind is becoming clearer and clearer. Grandma came out of the house when she heard the sound stinky hooves. What are you yelling for in the middle of the night? Grandma's sharp and angry voice came through. She thought the jarring noise was made by me. He stormed out of the room, fuming, and said, "Do you think I won't hit you?" However, she was midway through speaking. It's like being choked by an invisible hand. The sound came to an abrupt halt. Her eyes suddenly widened. The eyeball almost protrudes out of the eye. socket staring in horror at the spine-chilling scene in the yard under the moonlight. She saw her father's shriveled body. He saw the monster with a sister's head but a doll-like body lying on him. Grandma stood there in daze. It's as if a immobilizing spell has been cast on them. Open your mouth slightly, but I couldn't make any sound. After a moment, she finally came to her senses, let out a heart-wrenching howl. The voice was filled with despair and fear. It seems as if it is tearing the entire night sky apart. My sister might think she's too noisy. A hint of impatience flashed across his face. She uses both hands. He clamped down on his grandmother's mouth with lightning-fast speed. The intensity is astonishingly high. Grandma's mouth was instantly reduced to a pulp. The two lips are tightly stuck together. He could only make a muffled, inarticulate sound of sobbing. The younger sister is standing close to her grandmother's face. A sweet smile emerged. "Grandma," she called out sweetly. The voice is crisp and pleasant to the ear, but it carries an unmistakable chill. Then she suddenly pounced on her grandmother's throat. Her hands were like sharp claws, tore off grandmother's throat without mercy. Blood flows like a gushing stream, dyeing her hands and face red. "I'm going to find the shaman," she said. After she left, the courtyard was enveloped in an eerie silence. I stood up, leaving the woodshed, and headed toward the back mountain. As I drew closer to the mountain, I felt a refreshing clarity wash over me. "Have you remembered everything?" At my mother's grave, Uncle Liu approached and asked. I turned to him, offering a faint smile. "Yes, I've remembered. 3 years ago, on the night my mother passed away, was the first time I met Uncle Liu. Back then, I was sitting before my mother's body, crying inconsolably. Uncle Liu approached, his face etched with sorrow as he gazed at her shrouded figure. His trembling fingers gently caressed her face as he choked out, 'Sister.' Strictly speaking, I should call him Uncle. My mother was trafficked to this village long ago. If not for her abduction, she would have been living a beautiful life. Not here, reduced to a tool for childbirth. Do you want revenge?" he asked. I stared blankly at him, not answering. He seemed to sense something off about me and formed a hand seal. After a moment he muttered, "So that's how it is." He stood, his voice turning icy. "Then I'll pave the way for you in this village until you awaken." Thus, Uncle settled in the village. Years ago, Uncle had the fortune to learn mystic arts from a wandering Taoist priest. These arts allowed him not only to see the yin and yang of the world, but also to dissipate grievances and aid spirits in reincarnation. One of Uncle's unique skills was crafting lifelike dolls, which seemed almost alive. Remarkably, he could imbue these dolls with the souls of aggrieved female infants, channeling their resentment into orchestrated performances that ultimately freed them from their attachments and allowed for reincarnation. However, seeing my mother's tragic death 3 years ago changed him. He hated how his sister had been treated and resolved to stop aiding spirits in moving on. Instead, he wanted the villagers to reap what they had sown. He made sure the newborn girls were raised well, buying them at the age of 3 to place them in orphanages far from the village. As for my mother, her body was skinned, and he used her blood to craft a doll. I am my mother's vesseler, rather, a collective entity embodying the grievances and hopes of countless murdered girls from this village. The night of my birth, when my father tried to throw me into the infant tower, my mother resisted but couldn't stop him. During their struggle, she pressed a twin-fish jade pendant into my hand. Gripping it tightly, I somehow became a beacon for the wandering souls of thousands of slain infants. On the night I died, their power resurrected me. I opened my eyes, radiant with a light not of this world, and crawled back home. The shaman, noticing something amiss, sealed my consciousness with her knowledge, leaving me in a daze for 5 years until today. At Uncle's home, he showed me a room full of dolls. When I focused, Half of them sprang to life, laughing eerily and crawling out into their respective homes. Puzzled, I turned to the remaining lifeless dolls. Uncle explained, "These have been freed of their grievances and are now just empty shells." That night, screams and wails echoed through the village as retribution unfolded. At dawn, Uncle and I stood at the village entrance. "It's time," he said. Together, we set the village ablaze, the flames devouring every corner. Amidst the inferno, Uncle burned the talismans that controlled the dolls, declaring, "These children have moved on." Yet in my pocket, I kept my mother's Dalmi's soul attachment. Even if she was gone, I couldn't bear to part with it. Crossing the mountains, we stumbled upon a lone straw hut. Deciding to rest there, I lay on a crude bed with the doll in my grasp. As sleep overtook me, a sudden pull on my hand jolted me awake. The doll was trembling. Cold dread enveloped me as I remembered the muffled sobs I'd heard earlier in Uncle's doll room. If the souls had truly moved on, why were there still cries? A chilling voice came from behind me. "Child, you and your sister have been very naughty.